Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Within the Chaos
with your host,
Rodney Shortridge,
and co-host,
Robin Dalton.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. You can listen in by calling 516-387-1922, or you could go to the Vibe Radio Network website at blogtalkradio.com/Vibe Radio Network. From deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge. I'll be your host tonight, along with my fiery redhead co-host, Robin Dalton.
Hey, y'all.
Begin to wonder if you was there. Tonight, our special guest is Michelle Belanger. Michelle is an author, occult expert, most widely recognized for appearances on Paranormal State, HBO, and History Channel, Destination America, and CNN Headline News. Michelle's nonfiction has been published around the globe and has translated into 7 languages. Notable titles include Conspiracy of Angels and the Dictionary of Demons, currently in its 7th print. Got a few announcements for everyone. BDPS, along with Within the Chaos, will be at this year's Bluefield, Virginia Autumn Jamboree this Saturday, September 10th, starting at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. A few of our BDPS members will be at the Burke's Garden Fall Festival Saturday, September 24th, starting at 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., located in the beautiful Burke's Garden area. While Robin and myself will be at the Meade County, Kentucky Paracon the same day, September 24th, starting at 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're spreading the BDPS and Within the Chaos love around 2 states on the same day. Also, Black Diamond Paranormal Society, along with Historic Pocahontas, Inc. and the town of Pocahontas, will be hosting the 5th annual Pocahontas Haunted Tours this year on October 1st. Tours start at 1 p.m. until 1 a.m. Located in Pocahontas, Virginia, we have exciting news this year. BDPS will be adding night tours through the cemetery this year, along with adding the Opera House, the jail, and courthouse to the tours. This year's sponsors of the 5th annual Pocahontas Haunted Tours are Rodriguez Funeral Home of Pocahontas, Virginia, and Herscott Funeral Home of Tazewell, Virginia. Whew. So, Robin, how was your week?
About as busy as what that paragraph was.
How's the long one? You got to get out of the bathroom. You're in the bathroom again. You got to get out of there.
I'm not in the bathroom. I'm in the bedroom.
Wait. Get
No,
out
I
under the
tried to
covers.
get
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
Yeah, I actually got off in time tonight to actually make supper for the family, and went and got my outfit for Olivia's wedding. So excited. I'm even more excited that the sale I got, I spent like $15 on everything. It was great. And I just ate me a peanut butter fudge, and I'm ready to go.
Well, thank God it's not a really fancy wedding.
I know. I didn't say what the original cost was. I said I got it for.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to dive right into this interview because we got a lot I'd like to try to cover if we can. So it's my honor to welcome Michelle Belanger. Hello, Michelle, and thank you for joining us tonight. How you doing?
Hey, thank you, both of you, for having me on tonight.
Hello,
Oh,
Michelle.
How y'all doing?
We hanging in there. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, I think most of the folks who are into the paranormal probably know me either from Paranormal State or if they've got my books. It would be the Dictionary of Demons or maybe the Ghost Hunter's Survival Guide. I've been studying paranormal and occult topics for, oh lordy, going on 25 years now, writing about them for about that same amount of time. And currently I've been writing fiction in the same vein, ghosts and demons and possessions, because, well, you know how it is for any of us, our work and our play, we're always interested in what goes bump in the night, right?
Exactly.
Oh, you got that. Yeah. So what got you started in the paranormal world?
Well, the psychic stuff, I grew up in a family where psychic abilities were fairly common, and it was something that was okay to talk about. So it wasn't, shamed or particularly hidden. And I'm someone who everybody has a different way of coming to understand the world around them. Some people are really hands-on, when they're learning something, they've got to, teaching them it isn't going to work. They've got to put their hands on it, actually make it be a thing. I'm a book learner. Everything I go and research, and trying to understand my own abilities and experiences sent me to books on the paranormal. I grew up in the 70s when there was a similar boom in interest in ghosts and psychic abilities. They call it ESP back then. And shows like In Search Of, That's Incredible, Shadow Chasers, and I saw stuff, and the more I heard, the more I wanted to learn, and the further I dug into the books, the deeper the rabbit hole got.
That's the truth. Ooh.
So, did any of your experiences that you've had in the paranormal world kind of guide you into your writing?
Yeah, both the fiction and the nonfiction. I mean, the nonfiction, one of the things that always peeved me was that so many books get written with an agenda. Somebody's trying to tell you what to believe, not just what happened, especially when it comes to ghosts and everything else. And one of the things that I really tried to do and continue to try to do with my nonfiction is simply gather as much factual stuff together and leave the decisions on, how you believe, whether or not you choose to, take it for truth up to the reader. And that was the biggest trick, was doing that with the Dictionary of Demons, because angels and demons are such a firmly ingrained idea in religious systems. But all I wanted to do was show what kind of conversation we've had about these things, what kind of things have been written over the past several hundred years, and then, on the broader spectrum, the past several thousand with Western civilization. For the fiction, I draw very much on my own experiences, especially the stuff that you wouldn't ever really be able to tell people. The experiences. I know if you guys have had anything happen, there's always those things that, if you shouted it to the world, they would just tell you were crazy. So those things go into the fiction.
Oh.
So, how has paranormal world kind of shaped your life?
It's been a foundational part of my life. I mean, I maybe don't think about how significantly, especially being sensitive, affects things. But I pick up stuff in just everyday conversation. Going to the grocery store, you pick up for me, when I go out into the world, the emotions of people, whether they're troubled or hurting, these are really loud. And if I'm not blocking it out, I'll find myself drawn to somebody just to have a conversation with them and brighten their day, because I can tell they're carrying around a lot on their shoulders.
Okay. Excuse me. Can you explain vampirism? Because I know you're in kind of into that area.
Well, for most people, the idea of a vampire is going to just be, Dracula or what you've seen on movies and TV. And, there are definitely mythical, fictional vampires. And, the ones that go back into folklore are actually a very peculiar kind of haunting that, depending on the sources, are either physical or non-physical. But to be vampiric, there are some people, and everybody's had an experience with someone like this, who seem to sap your energy. There's a lot who don't necessarily know what they're doing and aren't doing it responsibly. There's kind of one of two types. There's like your old Aunt Edna, who just like sucks you into 3-hour-long conversations about her hemorrhoids and bunions. And you know the one. And you can't get away. And like there's something more than just your attention and your time that she's taking from you. By the time you're done, you're just deflated. And then the other one is a little bit more aggressive, and you see this person who's a lot more in like the workplace, where like they're not very good at like respecting other people's boundaries. They like get up in your business and they push all your buttons, and they do a lot to get a rise out of people, to get a lot of emotional response out of people, and in causing conflict and orchestrating those kind of interactions, they seem to be preying on people more than just emotionally, more than just mentally, and there is an energetic aspect to that, a psychic aspect to what they're doing. But you don't have to go your whole life without realizing that people every day, every conversation, every interaction, they exchange energy. Some people generate more, and some people work on a deficit where they are naturally taking more. Sometimes it's because they have chronic illness. Sometimes it's for other reasons. And once you become aware of that flux and flow, you can make choices about whether or not you're going to be old Aunt Edna forever, or that guy who's just always up in everybody's face in the workplace, or if you choose a different way of doing it. And there's a whole community of people who are aware that they are sensitive to energy, that they're psychic. It goes hand in hand with the whole vampiric part. Their relationship with energy is a little bit different from everybody else. And there isn't a better word in the English language than vampire for it, although it is worlds away from Dracula, Lestat, and that sparkly little twit from Twilight.
I agree. God damn, I agree. Shit. I understand that you have psychic abilities because I've watched you on a lot of your shows and stuff. Can you explain to everyone what it means to be a psychic and to have psychic abilities?
It's like living in a world where everywhere anybody else has walked, it's like they've been dipped in paint. And each color of paint is a different emotion, a different thing that they're carrying around with them. And they leave little colored footsteps, and sometimes they brush up against walls. And houses where they live, they spend all their time. You've just got smears and smears of all these different colors of paint all layered on top. And you can see it when not everybody else can. But that doesn't mean that you can always understand what all those layers mean, or that you can clearly get a timeline of how those layers got built up. Sometimes, especially when you first walk in, all you see is just all of this color everywhere. Some people pick it up not as sight. It's just a feeling. It's a gut instinct. But either way, there's an aspect to the world that not everybody's tuned into consciously. But I will tell you that in watching people, in knowing like what I pick up in a room as opposed to what somebody else who doesn't think that they're psychic picks up unconsciously in a room, everybody reacts to this stuff. We're all sensitive on some level. Everybody's got that heebie-jeebie feeling of a certain room where you're just like, there's no reason for it, but you just can't be there. Or certain people rub you the wrong way, or maybe rub you really the right way, and you feel like a strong connection to them. People don't think of that as psychic. For me, there's an extra depth of awareness to how much information is coming from that. But I don't necessarily think it makes me any different from anybody else. It just, I've spent more time trying to understand it.
Did you have to go through any kind of training to strengthen your psychic abilities?
Well, I wish I had teachers, a lot of book learning, and a lot of trial and error, a lot of practice, so what I would do, because the world is a really loud place when you tune in to especially like the emotions that people leave behind. And as a teenager, that was a lot to deal with. I mean, I had all my own stuff to deal with, never mind what everybody else was putting out in the world. And I'd go down. I'm in rural suburban Ohio, so I'd go to the mall because it was one of the only public places to go where I knew that there would be people, and I would practice kind of finding the volume button, like turning it up all the way and then turning it down all the way, like shutting it out. so that I could get a sense of how to control it, how to not be overwhelmed. And that was a lot of trial and error. I mean, I'd read about shielding, which is, just the idea of like closing yourself off, but that never worked perfectly. The idea of, for me, it's not comfortable to shield so hard that I'm not getting anything at all. Like there's a certain sense of being suffocated I get from that. But again, finding that kind of volume button with it. And that was purely trial and error.
Does clairvoyance and empaths and people like that, does that go hand in hand with psychics, or is that just completely different levels or different readings or feelings or so forth?
I think the best way I can explain it is a psychic is kind of like, think of it as like Christian. Psychic is like the big blanket umbrella term, and then clairvoyant or empath is like all the other little things inside of that. And so somebody who's clairvoyant or somebody who's an empath is psychic. They're just a particular type. And the one thing I found is it's not as simple as putting people in boxes. Somebody who's an empath may have dreams that come true, so they may have foresight. It may not be something that happens all the time. And some people who are very, very tuned into emotions may go through periods of their life where that becomes much quieter, where that ability quiets down usually because they're going through a whole lot of their own stuff, and just in order to survive, they've got to shut it down. But there's many different flavors of psychic and many different ways the abilities present, and they are not necessarily as clear as simple boxes or labels.
Well, does your study of psychology help or hamper your experiences within the paranormal?
It helps immensely. It really helps to understand how the human mind works, how we process information, how sometimes we skew information, even without meaning to, especially if we're tired, distracted, or if we go into something expecting a certain result. For Paranormal State, anybody who saw that, you probably saw me walking around places with a blindfold on. And while we didn't start doing that until a little way into the thing, when they suggested it as just kind of a lark, as an experiment, I found it was tremendously helpful. Because as someone who does understand psychology, I know that when we walk into a room, any room, any house, anywhere, there is all of this information that we aren't necessarily conscious that we're picking up on. There's the photos people have over their mantelpiece that tell a whole story about the family, the choice of books in bookshelves or the lack of books in bookshelves, the style of art, the colors, from everything from how clean it is to how messy to, if there's kids' things on the floors. And all of that tells you a story about the family. Even if you don't mean to take pieces of that information and kind of create a picture of what that family is like, that's normal for people to do. Like we're constantly processing lots of information from our environment. So finding the line between what is simple physical observation and actual psychic information can be very challenging, and the blindfold helped to rule a lot of that out.
Wow.
Okay.
So what was your driving force for your book, Conspiracy of Angels?
Partly, there were a lot of things we experienced with Paranormal State that we couldn't share with the world. Some of it's just contract stuff, but some of it was just things that didn't have an easy explanation or were so far beyond the pale of believable. And I really needed a way of, working through it. And writing has always been a way for me to kind of sort things out in my head. I didn't have hard answers or explanations for the particular things I needed to work through in the book series, so fiction seemed like the best place to do it, to tell stories based off of some of the experiences, to kind of get a feel for how those experiences affect people more emotionally than factually.
Right.
It's a safe place to do it.
Well, that's pretty cool. So would you say that was some of your experiences was really what inspired you to start writing? Or was it something?
Absolutely. Oh no, it was definitely the experiences. There was I can tell this story. There was an episode that I am not on, but I was sent out for. They had to cut me out of it because there is such a thing as being too psychic when there are such things as privacy clauses. And what had happened is a woman had hung herself about 3 weeks before, and I didn't know anything about this, but picking up on what went into her suicide, what led her to that, the 18 years of stuff that she had endured with her family, and the things that other people were enduring, walking into that blindfolded, with no knowledge, no way to shield. I mean, my whole job was to be open and raw to it, but to have all of that misery and trauma wash over me, it was really hard to scrub it back out of my head. I'd been in really dark hauntings before in places where horrible things had happened, but this was recent, and she was somebody who was around my age. It was a more southern part of Ohio, but she felt like everything that she left behind, it felt so familiar. It was really hard to pull those experiences and be clear that they weren't mine. Like the lines get really blurred. And that experience more than anything else, I wanted, through my character Zach Westland, to show people what it felt like to kind of like walk into a space where it was haunted by not necessarily a ghost, but by memories, by emotion, by shadows, by just all of the trauma that had built up over time, or in one brilliant instant of horror. And that becomes a fundamental part of the book series. Zach's psychic, and he encounters these places called crossings where something terrible happens. And in almost all cases, it's human trauma that wears like a soft spot between reality, where spirits can then cross over or interact in our world. And in Zach's case, he can cross over and deal with them on their turf.
Wow. That sounds awesome. So could you tell us a little more information about some more of your books and how everyone could get a copy of them?
Well, everything is, if it's not on the shelves in like your regular bookstores, you can go up and ask for them to get a hold of it. Amazon, of course, too. I mean, bookstores, shelf space is at a premium. Like the Dictionary of Demons came out in 2010 now, so 6 years ago. Although that one is usually still on the shelves. A couple of them, Haunting Experiences, the Ghost Hunter Survival Guide, all of those have to do with paranormal stuff. Haunting Experiences is nonfiction, but it's where I kind of tread the line of being a storyteller as well. I was taking personal experiences and recounting them in a way that would be as factual but also as interesting as possible. And honestly, after doing all the research for the Dictionary of Demons, which involved digging through like Latin manuscripts from like the 14th century and German block print and a whole lot of other like really, really heavy research, I wanted a break. So it was just natural to move into the fiction and, kind of tell stories and have fun with the same things that I'd been spending time with. The Dictionary of Demons and other ones are published by a publisher called Llewellyn. Titan Books picked up the fiction series, the Shadowside series. Conspiracy of Angels, the first book, came out last year. Harsh Gods came out this year, actually just last week. And I'm working on the third one called The Resurrection Game. And the cool thing with the fiction is everything that I've been doing for the past 20, 25 years all kind of culminates in those stories. It creates a mythos. But again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much anywhere there are books that are sold, you can get a hold of my stuff.
I'm definitely going to be looking for them. So we all, everyone knows that you're well known for, TV shows such as Paranormal State. Could you talk a little bit about your experiences on the show? Like, did you have any cases you were working on that it really affected you personally? I mean, I know you were just speaking of one.
Yeah. Oh, there was so much. I mean, I originally got involved with Paranormal State. I was friends with the PRS folks. Elfie and Josh Light particularly were the ones who had started to kind of lobby to get me on screen, on camera. I did a bunch of research behind the scenes before anybody gets to see me as a psychic. And initially, when they first brought me on, it was actually as kind of Elfie's mentor in the occult and in research. But Chip Coffey changed all that by noting that I was psychic and kind of outing me to the crew about it in his fun-loving way. And that particular episode, I think it's called The Messenger, he did his walkthrough, and what he insisted was he had them keep me, away from everything, and then they had me go through and do a reading after him, just to kind of like see what points we would hit. And he and I both ended up being attracted to all the same places in the house and hit upon all the same significant events that were there, which was really neat to like kind of like. Yeah, no, it was really fun to kind of play dueling psychics and see that we were hitting all the same stuff without conferring. There was good stuff, there was bad stuff, there was some terrible stuff. The suicide was the one that hit me the worst, I think. But there was another one. The episode is called The Anniversary, and it involved a girl. I can't remember if she was somewhere between the ages of 12 and 14, and her name was Sarah. And she had been raped and murdered 100 years before, almost 100 years to the date, before we showed up to do the investigation. It was in Kentucky. The house that we were doing the investigation in was relatively new construction, but Sarah and her family had lived on the property not very far from it. And she had a cousin who wasn't quite right in the head, and things went very, very badly with his interest in his little cousin. The weird thing about that one was, and there were several episodes in a row where this happened, and I can't fully explain it. I dreamed, without knowing I was going to this episode, without even realizing that I was dreaming basically my walkthrough, about 5 days or so before I was called out to this investigation. I had this vivid dream where a person led me through this horrific history of this girl and this person who ends up doing horrible things to her in the woods, and she didn't die right away. Like, he started to choke her to get her to be quiet, and then realized that and thought he'd killed her. He started to walk away, and she screamed. So just kind of out of desperation, he went and actually finished the job. And they went and tried to like hide his muddy boots. And in the dream, I'm being showed like each of these stages and like his attempt to hide stuff, and that he got killed shortly after as well. And I have vivid dreams, and I've learned to write as much of them down as possible to help identify the ones that are actually dreams telling me something that may have happened or may have already, or may be meaning to happen. My grandmother sometimes had dreams that came true, and she was the one who trained me to write it down. So, I get up from this dream that's like basically a freaking movie, write down as much as I can. I recorded a lot of it in my phone just to have an audio version of it. I get called out to the investigation, and I go in, and this is before we did the blindfold stuff, and all I'm getting at this house is the dream. Like, the dream is the only stuff that's coming back. There's a few other impressions, and I finally kind of say, frack it and go with what was rolling around in my head. And as far as I knew, when I was done with that investigation, they, schlepped me back off to the plane, that I was just, pulling stuff out of my bum. I didn't know if it was right, wrong, or otherwise, because it was so messed up with the dream. About 2 weeks later, I get called out to another investigation, and the crew is acting really weird around me. Like, nobody's even meeting my eyes, and I don't know if, I'm going to get fired. Am I the redheaded stepchild? What did I do? Katrina Weidman is the one who bailed me out. She saw me sitting quietly near HQ, and she's like, nobody told you, did they? And I was like, told me what? Like, how your investigation went the last time, the psychic reading? And I'm like, nope, I don't know. Was it good? Was it bad? This was fairly common. Like, I would go do the reading. Nobody would tell me if I was right, wrong, or otherwise. And Ryan Buell's poker face was pretty darn good. So she pulls out a paperwork, old newspaper clippings and things, and shows me how clearly I'd hit every single thing that had happened with this girl Sarah, and the person that had done the horrible things to her. And that one, if I had any questions about whether or not my abilities were genuine, whether or not to trust them, that particular episode really put me in a position where I was like, well, clearly there are stories that need to be told. And, somebody wanted that truth to come out.
Wow. I think that could have been I'd say that was really emotional.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever been asked by the producers or anyone within the network to do something that, goes against your integrity for the show?
Well, let me tell you that our contracts came up, and there is a reason that we did not go back, and that reason had a lot to do with toward the end. Well, everybody sees the ghost shows, and if you've ever done an actual investigation, you know that a lot of investigation is sitting in the dark with a camera or your voice recorder or whatever for like hours upon hours upon hours, and nothing happens. Like it just, it doesn't. Like the ghosts are not inclined to like get up and dance a jig just because you ask them to. And a lot of ghost shows seem to get an awful lot of evidence very consistently. And what I will say is we did not consistently get a lot of evidence that the producers were happy with being, actual evidence. We were way more interested in helping families feel more comfortable with their houses, and explain to them what may or may not be going on. And sometimes what was going on wasn't a haunting at all. And I don't think that made the producers happy in all the cases. I know in at least one case it absolutely didn't make them happy. They had an idea of how things should be going and what was actually haunting a house, and it was not at all what we thought. And rather than continue to make the argument of we want to make genuine TV, not necessarily what the producers think is good TV, we walked away.
Kudos to you.
That sounds like it's a common factor here these days. Do you have any future plans for another TV show?
I will say that I am incredibly picky. I've had a lot of offers, and I've turned a lot of things down. It would have to allow me to maintain a level of integrity that I don't know is workable for a lot of people's ideas of what television should be. If I find the right crew, if I find the right producer, if I find the right concept, and they are willing to allow me a fair amount of control, and by control I mean allowing me to be genuinely me and not I don't like bull crap. And my main thing about sharing any of this stuff about haunting investigation, psychic abilities, any of it is to educate, is to reach out to people like me or people who have had experiences and make them not feel alone, make them not feel crazy, make them realize that there are other people out there and that there are ways that they can find answers. It's not to get like the best EVP and send chills down people's spines. It's not to make a spectacle of ghosts and hauntings. If you figure that a ghost is actually the spirit of a dead human, they don't stop being human just because they're not wearing skin. So I'm not going to treat them ridiculously. I'm not going to do any of that nonsense. So if I find the right thing, if somebody's willing to put up with that no-nonsense attitude, then yes. But it is why I've only done a couple of spots here and there, and most of them have not been recently as a psychic, but as a researcher. So if you've seen me on Monsters and Mysteries of America, it was because of my expertise in demons and demonology and other types of folkloric hauntings. Because again, Hollywood has very unreasonable expectations of how special effectsy psychic stuff and ghost stuff really is, and it's not. Again, if you've ever been in an investigation, investigating a haunted house, you are sitting in the dark for hours and nothing is going on.
You got that right.
God, you got that right.
Yeah. I know you're also an occult expert. Could you explain to our listeners what that means and what all it entails?
Well, occult is just a word that means hidden or secret, and occult is a blanket word, not a cult, occult. It's a blanket word for all of the weird stuff that's off the beaten path. 200 years ago, psychic abilities would fall under the occult. So anything from magic, witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, the study of ghosts, all of the stuff that goes back for hundreds and if not thousands of years. The weird stuff that is off the beaten path, I study it. So folkloric entities like doppelgangers, incubus, succubus, vampires, werewolves, whatever goes bump in the night. The books people have written about things like that, magical books, all of it. It's just a big blanket for all the weird stuff out there.
Awesome.
Well, I understand that you've used the Ouija board, and I know that a Ouija board is a hot topic in the paranormal community. What are your experiences and thoughts on using a Ouija board?
I think it's a lot like a gun. It is a tool. It is not necessarily like dangerous by itself. Like, the Ouija board right there is not a portal in and of itself. It's what people use it for. And honestly, if people are using any tool irresponsibly, if they are trying to invite or open themselves and their space up to negative entities or anything that they want to just like scare them, whether it's a Ouija board, a pendulum, or a deck of playing cards that they've decided to use for this, it doesn't matter what the item is. It's their intent. Now that said, unfortunately, we've really kind of presented Ouija boards as ways of drawing evil in, and people are so primed on that you've got kind of like one of two schools of thought for people who play with them. They're either playing with them because they don't totally believe that anything's going to work, and they really are inviting mischievous stuff. They're kind of like thumbing their noses at the possibility that bad stuff could happen, while at the same time asking for bad stuff to happen. They just want it to. They want lightning to strike them just to prove it. Or you have people who are honestly sitting down and using it as responsibly as they can, but their fear, because they've seen so many negative representations, sort of whispers in their ear while they're doing it, and that fear can also start to attract darker things. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a tool, but again, like a gun, a 4-year-old shouldn't be playing with it. Somebody who doesn't know how it works shouldn't be playing with it. Somebody who can't use it responsibly shouldn't be playing with it. And, if you are going to use something like that, you should be very clear on educating yourself how to protect yourself, how to clear stuff out of the space if bad things come because of it, and how to protect anybody else who might be working with you.
I agree 100%. Well, do you have any skepticism when you approach a paranormal or supernatural claim?
I do, but I suspect that most people hearing the word psychic wouldn't think of me as a skeptic. A true skeptic is somebody who keeps an open mind and waits to see empirical evidence, one way or the other. I believe that my abilities have some legitimacy just from years and years and years of putting them to the test and putting them to tests for my own, belief and well-being. A large part of that was using the so Paranormal State, in addition to helping clients, in addition to helping my friends who were on the show, was sort of an exercise to see if I could just go cold to a house or a state I've never been to before, a family I've never met, walk in and do a reading and see if any of that's accurate at all. Again, that whole psychology thing, when you do readings for friends or people that there's so much information that you're getting that isn't psychic. It's just, it's cold reading, whether you want to call it that or not. So I like to keep stance. When I do a reading, I don't assume that it's accurate. I don't assume that it's right. I let whatever's coming to mind come out, make sure that it's recorded, and then someone who is not me, someone who's not invested in it being right, wrong, or otherwise, does the research to see if any of that was accurate at all. And then, we kind of I at least measure, how many hits versus how many misses are involved in any one reading. I've also done some work with the Rhine Institute, and for people who might not know, the Rhine Institute was a parapsychology branch of Duke University, founded by J.B. Rhine for the study of psychic abilities and extrasensory perception. It's no longer a part of Duke University because it lost its funding, but it is now a private research institute, and they continue J.B. Rhine's work of doing their best to plumb the depths of these human abilities and see how they can be recorded, how they can be proven, how they can be measured.
Wow.
I like the science of the paranormal. I honestly, even more than I like being able to, walk into a room and pick up weird memories from it. It's that can look too much like a parlor trick. I like to see the nuts and bolts of the science.
All right. So would you say that you use a lot of scientific techniques when you go on a case?
Well, mostly I use the scientific method of trial and error, empirical evidence. Basically, especially with psychic stuff, it's hard to have pure laboratory circumstances out in the field, but you can still do blind tests. If there's a room where everybody says they experience a sudden cold chill at 3 a.m. when they're sitting in one part of it, what you do is you have several somebodies ideally, who have no idea that this is something that's supposed to happen in that room, and you just keep putting different people in that room. You don't let them confer with one another, and you observe them, and you record what is going on, and you make sure you've got hard copies of those recordings and from several different areas, and you make sure you're paying attention around 3 a.m. to see if that person gets the chills, and then you rule out, did they have the flu? You just have to use good analysis out in the field, and you can't rely on anecdotal evidence. Now, I know that a lot of ghost hunters think scientific and equate that with using the tech, like a K2 meter, trying to get EMF or electro, like the FLIR cameras and things. And I will tell you, and pretty much everybody who ever had to deal with me on Paranormal State with electronics, batteries, and tech, I would use that a lot more reliably if something about me didn't very consistently make it not work right. I know everybody who's done investigations has had that moment where you kind of feel like something's going to happen and then all the batteries die.
Yep.
Batteries die on me regularly. The person who is responsible for my mic pack, I would go through consistently 3 times as many batteries as anybody else, and very consistently when I did any of my weird stuff, when I was off doing the woogity psychic stuff, that was when the tech would malfunction around me very frequently. So it kind of puts a damper on me using any of the tech. It doesn't often work reliably with me.
Well, with all your fascinating experiences that you've had, have you ever had an experience that has really caused you fear? There's definitely been some things that have chilled me. Although more so, it's when physical things, when real world things start behaving in ways that they probably shouldn't. When I was in college, my college had a property. I'm going to call it Whitethorn Woods so I don't get sued. I talk about this in Haunting Experiences. We did a retreat there, and toward the end of it, and there'd been all kinds of very strange experiences that many people were having, but toward the end of it, blackbirds started to come out of the woods and land. It was like somebody's summer house. So there were these two houses on the property. Blackbirds, crows, and not just all one type of blackbirds, but just a flock of birds. And the only thing they had in common is they were all black.
They were real physical animals. Like, several of us watched this happen. They started coming out of the woods, and they started to land on the roof of the farthest house. And it was the house that everybody had identified as, like, everybody had like, very weird things going on in that house. And when the birds landed, they just sat and stared at us. They stopped making any noise. So, and they just kept, more and more of them kept coming out of the woods until they covered the roof of this house. And they kept getting closer and closer to us. The house was on the other side of a little ravine. There was a little footbridge. And for a little while, like, we were cleaning up and we were on our way out. But there was just this great temptation to kind of, like, at least on my part, to hang around and see what was going to happen if they got all the way over to us. I mean, you know, it was Alfred Hitchcock movie kind of stuff. Like, when animals behave so bizarrely, especially in a place where there was a sense that there was something that was not quite normal, something paranormal, something deeply paranormal in that space. And here are physical animals. There's nothing that could be telling them to do this. You know, nobody trained the birds to randomly decide, you know, that all these blackbirds were going to act this weirdly. That was a profoundly chilling moment. And I will admit, I was the last one out, but even I had to, like, get in the car and just get away, because I kind of didn't want to know what would happen once they got to me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'd be leaving too.
I'd be sitting there going, got me some bird to eat. Just kidding. Just kidding.
It was, well, it was so weird.
I bet it was, but I'm serious. I'll be like, I want it to taste like chicken. But anyway, I know you mentioned a little bit about demons. Have you ever encountered a demonic presence? And if you have, you know, what was that experience like?
I've encountered some things that people would be very inclined to call demons. I think that the word gets tossed around a little too easily. And there's some things that are intelligent and dark and very human, but again, they get the label demon. In one or two cases, and I work closely with Father Bob, both on and off camera, there are two that come to mind where I don't have a better word than demon. And I should say, my definition of demon is something that is clearly a non-human entity, clearly bigger and badder than us, very intelligent, clearly malevolent, like something about this thing drives it to cause people harm. And in one case, it was a case of possession, and I watched as Father Bob was doing his best to help this person, and you know the person's voice would change and the whole look of their face would change. But in addition to that, to my other senses, like, you could feel those shifts before they would happen, like a pressure in the room, a wrongness of energy kind of draped over this person. The other one, I'm not even sure if this episode made it to any final cut. There was some debate when we were there based on stuff that came out in the investigation with the clients. But first walking into that house, it was like there was a great eye hanging over it, just staring right at me with such a keen and hateful intelligence, but also this patience that it could wait for us to leave, that it had all the time in the world to do what it wanted to do to the people that it was doing it to. And I have no better word than demon for both of those cases.
Damn.
Wow.
Well, have you had any experiences other than hauntings, such as cryptozoology or any UFO encounters?
I had an uncle who worked for Project Blue Book. He was a fairly high-ranking clearance in the Air Force, and I grew up with him, and he had all kinds of stories. He had this little black box that just had a little red light on the top of it, and he explained to me that what they had found with UFO flaps was that there would be certain electromagnetic shifts that would happen before they would stuff would happen, before you could see lights in the sky and stuff. And all I know for sure is my aunt, his wife, refused to let him have this thing in the house. Like, he had to keep it as far away from her, because, like, if that little light went off, he would go off and look for lights in the sky and very consistently find them. I saw some stuff with him, nothing that was very close. But as somebody who was in the Air Force, he would point out to me, like, what lights and what profiles things would have as recognizable aircraft. But honestly, they were so very far up, it just looked like tiny little stars that were moving around and sometimes disappeared. And as far as cryptids, I saw a cat with wings. It wasn't just me, it was 5 or 6 of us, and we tried to catch that dang thing. Furry wings growing out of its little back, nothing that it would have been able to fly with. But, clearly, like, some genetic anomaly. I didn't even know that this was a thing, but it sent me off to, like, research and find that every once in a while, strangely enough, cats will grow these wing-like appendages on their backs. No reason,
Wow.
No idea why, but a cat with wings.
I want one.
Yeah, no, I was just like, it was a stray, and it came up to us while we were out in somebody's backyard in my hometown in Hinckley. And at first we thought the thing had gotten hit by a car, that it was wounded, because there was this, weird stuff sticking off of its back. And when you look at something that is, like, so unexpectedly strange, like, your brain can't wrap itself around it at first. Like, you try to find other things that would make sense. And finally, as I, tried to get closer to it to see if we could help the thing, I thought at first, it's like, okay, it's like mats of fur. And then it got up and it turned around and started to walk away. And they're just bouncing, like flapping a little bit. And the more it moved, the more you realize that there was like musculature, like there was skeletal structure in these things. It was so weird.
Yes, definitely I want one.
Yeah, I totally want one.
So what do you do when you're not so busy, Michelle?
When I'm not so busy, I'll tell you. I write. I write a lot. I mean, I especially because right now with the fiction series, fiction, there's so much work involved with it. Not just the writing of it, but like editing and promotion and a whole bunch of stuff. So I signed up. I wanted the challenge, but dang, I signed up to quite a challenge. So like the next several months is just going to be me sitting with my butt in my chair and working on getting the third book out while we're also promoting the second book. And there's a novella that we're going to give away for free next month. And so there's like all this like online stuff that I have to do to try to. I sometimes go for long walks at night. That's about the extent of it these days. Hang out with my 2 cats. And sometimes I cook. I like baking.
Oh, cool. So, where do you think the future of the paranormal and supernatural world is headed?
I think we're going to see a lot more. Well, I think we're going to see a lot more of the same. Ghost shows, as everybody tries to get on that bandwagon. But I think that the heyday is starting to wane. But much like when I was a kid in the 70s, it'll probably quiet down for a little while. Something new will be, the next new thing, and it'll never totally go away. I think the best thing that comes out of the ghost shows and all the reality TV is the fact that people like you and me can now have a conversation about what our experiences are without the pressure of a production company telling us what we should be doing or what we should be believing. So I think that dialogue is the best thing that we have to look forward to, that we can share our ideas, that we can have arguments about how we interpret evidence, and that those arguments, those disagreements can teach us just as much as agreeing, actually probably more. So I think conversation and dialogue, more exploration, and it'll all come back around on TV again because that's just the nature of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know when we went out to L.A. and to shoot for 3 episodes of My Ghost Story, they were trying to coerce me and some of the other people into saying things that wasn't true. And I told them, no. If that's the way it's going to be, fly me back to Virginia.
Yeah.
I am not lying.
Well, you got to be really, really careful, because some of them they're really good at editing what you said. So you have to be very careful with what you say. I know when we did the West Virginia State Penitentiary, they were hot to have me say that pentacle upstairs in the warden's chamber was clear evidence that somebody was doing satanic rituals in there. But there's a lot of reasons why that pentacle could be there. The Freemasons, the Order of the Eastern Star, not the least of it. So you've got to be real careful, especially with some of the shows. They really don't care if it's real or not. They just want a good TV show, and that's the sad truth of the production companies. Some of them don't even believe in ghosts. They're not out to educate people. They are out for a good scare. They are out for good ratings. And, I see too many people who are really well-meaning, who this is something that they have staked their lives and their careers on, going in naively and thinking that, if I just tell you the truth, if I just tell you what I believe, it's all going to work out in the end. And then, you see how it gets cut. So you have to be really canny. And I absolutely support you in saying, nope. you want me to fib? You want to twist my words? Just nope. Shut them down. If that happens, shut them down and walk off.
Oh, I did. The producer and director followed me outside, and he's like, here, smoke a cigarette and let's talk about this. I'm like, okay, I can smoke a cigarette, but ain't nothing to talk about if you're going to try to twist my words and my people's words. And he's like, I promise we won't. I said, I know you're going to cut it to make it sound the way you want it to, but we're not going to lie. And he's like, okay. They did a good job. I was really surprised that they did a good job. I was really worried. So
you got to hold your ground with that.
We're running out of time. Well, I tell you, an hour with you goes quick.
This is fun.
You got any special events or projects or anything that you're working on that's coming up here in the next, few months or rest of the year or next year?
Well, if you're local to Cleveland, Ohio, we're doing a book launch party for Harsh Gods this weekend on Saturday at the Barnes & Noble. But otherwise, honestly, the next until the end of December, I am going to be shut away writing a book. That's my plan. I will say, however, I filmed. I think I can say, if you watch a certain show on Destination America that has another person that you might recognize from Paranormal State, you will see me on an episode of that show.
Awesome. Well, do you have a website or something you'd like to give out to anyone or any contact information?
My first and last name, MichelleBelanger.com, and you spell Belanger, Belanger. So MichelleBelanger.com. If you do Twitter, I am Seth Anakim. Honestly, if you're trying to find me, just Google whack Michelle and Vampire. Put that in Google, and I will probably be the first 20 pages.
Woo! You look up Rodney Shortridge, I'd be lucky I get like 2 spots.
Well, I've been doing it for a while, and the vampire thing, I am one of probably 10 experts in the world, without bragging, on certain topics. So you'll find my name in lots of books and in lots of things, and that means it's easy to find me on Google.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. It has been a delight and a learning experience.
Thank you both for having me.
Michelle.
Get out under that blanket. God. Well, Michelle, it does. It sounds like you're under the blanket. Well, Michelle, you have a good night, and we look forward to trying to get you back on again sometime. When you get a new book out or anything you want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to have you back.
Most definitely.
Right. Yep. You take care, both of you.
Oh, you too. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
I want to thank Michelle Belanger for coming on the show. We have nothing but respect for the work she does and has done. That's it for us tonight. I want to thank everyone who took the time to listen. I'd like to give a big shout out to Vibe Radio Network, also to the first responders, our men and women in the armed services. Thank you for your service. Our guest for next Thursday night, September 15th, the first half hour will be Ben Hansen. Ben is most well known as a television host and lead investigator of Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Faked Paranormal Files. And the second half hour, will be our very own Jerry Connor.
Yay!
Yay! Good night, both of you. I gotta get back to work writing stuff.
Good night, Michelle.
It was great meeting you both. And yeah, I poke at Illyria. I'll come back on. You guys are fun.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, everybody, y'all have a good night. And we'll see y'all back here next weekend. Or next Thursday weekend. Shit. Just say bye, Robin.
Night, y'all.
Damn. Well, I think that's that.
Happy anniversary dinner, darling. Can this much love be cleaned by a little bit of Dawn Ultra? Oh, yeah. One bottle has the grease cleaning power of 2 bottles of this bargain brand. A drop of Dawn and grease is gone.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
It's a common expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. However, what if the horse's mouth is filled with useful insurance tools? This is the exact case with the Geico app. Yes, the app is free and therefore a gift horse. However, look inside the app and behold, emergency roadside assistance, digital ID cards, bill pay. Get the Geico app. Look it in the mouth. Get amazing services. Thank you.
Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.